And so our first speaker will be Michelle Cottrell-Williams. Michelle Cottrell-Williams teaches sociology and psychology at Wakefield High School in Arlington, Virginia. She's the 2018 Virginia Teacher of the Year. So if we can please give a warm welcome to Michelle Cottrell-Williams.
Good morning. So often people say that we are a nation of immigrants. However, I think it's a little more complex than that. If you're living in this country today, your ancestors, or yourself, are from one of four different groups. You may be an indigenous person to this land, having lived here for tens of thousands of years before Europeans ever arrived. If not, perhaps you're the descendant of a colonizer who came here from Europe seeking new land and leaving a bit of destruction in their wake. Next, you could be an immigrant, having moved to this country after the colonizers came, again, looking for a better life for you and your family. And if you don't fall into one of those three categories, then perhaps you're descended from a group of people who were kidnapped from their homes in Africa and brought here to work as slaves for hundreds of years in this country. So I'm from Virginia, and 2019 is a big year for us. 400 years ago, the year 1619 was a turning point in Virginia history. That year, two very different groups of migrants came to this land and were placed on two very different trajectories. Jamestown settlers had been living here for about 12 years at that time. And in November of 1619, the Virginia Company in Jamestown decided that they were going to make their settlement permanent. And so they went back to England and recruited women to immigrate to Virginia to be wives to the men who were living here. In May of 1620, 90 English-speaking women came to Virginia, marking the permanency of English settlement here in the New World. But in August of that year, August 1619, another ship arrived, the White Lion. It landed in Point Comfort, Virginia, which is now Hampton. As John Rolfe described in his diary, the ship contained 20 and odd people from Africa who had been kidnapped from their homes in Angola, separated from their families by the Portuguese, and later captured by an English privateer. They were brought to Virginia and forced to work as slaves for the remainder of their lives. By 1650, 300 Africans were living in Virginia. By 1680, 3,000 were here. And by 1704, in Virginia alone, 10,000 people who were taken from Africa were living here working as slaves. Between 1525 and 1866, 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped, separated from their families, shackled, and placed in the bottom of a boat where they had to endure the journey of the Middle Passage across the Atlantic Ocean, often taking 2 to 3 months to come to this land. Along that journey, almost 1.5 million Africans died, but 10.7 million survived and were sold up and down the Americas. As a matter of fact, only 388,000 of those kidnapped Africans disembarked in North America. And over 40% of those entered this nation in Charleston, South Carolina, where they were sold on auction blocks across the colonies. As the United States expanded west and technology improved, the demand for slaves increased even higher. By 1850, the United States had 3.2 million people living here enslaved. The Atlantic slave trade slowed in North America significantly by this time, but a domestic slave trade ensued in this country, where northern farmers in the south part of the United States, so the upper south, started selling their own slaves to the growing economy in the lower south. During this time, family separation was used to threaten and control the slaves that were living here. Our country's history of migration is not new. Our country's history of family separation is not new. Today, there are 47 million African Americans living in this country who are still reeling from the impacts of this history. My other colleagues will share with you other stories of immigration to this land. Immigration is part of the American story. It's part of who we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your lesson. We have a lot of things to be proud of about this country, but we also have to be cognizant of the history of our country, how a lot of things that we have today is because of the exploitation of the indigenous people, the genocide of them, the enslavement of a whole race. And so thank you very much for that, Michelle. We want to take a moment also to introduce to y'all our ASL interpreter. Amy Anderson is the state teacher of the year for last year from New Jersey. So thank you so much, Amy.